I'm Maureen, your multidimensional guide on what I call the cosmic scavenger hunt. I weave together earth medicine and galactic wisdom to help you remember who you are and what you're here to do. I practice quantum hypnosis, I work with the Akashic records, I integrate shamanic medicine, and mostly I'm just a student of life, an intuitive human who maybe is not so human, who is here following the clues that have led me to this point in what I'm calling the great transition of consciousness. This space is for anyone who feels the call. If you know that there's something happening for you, that you're perhaps here on a mission yourself, because my mission is to help you remember your mission. This links to some of my galactic lifetimes. If you sense that you have a mission here to serve humanity, the transition of consciousness that we're experiencing, or you know that you have a calling to express yourself creatively in a way that will help with this transition, or you just want to bring your life into more coherence, to live in alignment with your soul's blueprint, and then that will emanate out to those around you, you're in the right place. Welcome to the great transition, guided by the cosmic scavenger hunt. Enjoy the episode. What a month it has been since I first shared the great transition transmission I received on my son's 8th birthday. And so just for a quick recap, if you haven't watched that video, I recommend watching that one first or after this. Essentially, what I received from my guides was that we are currently in the process of birthing a new consciousness. And so the framework that I use is the densities rather than dimensions. So third density is the density that we have lived in for most of our lifetimes. It's a density of form, of structure, the density of the 5 senses. It's what you know as your reality. What we're shifting to is fourth density, which is actually much less dense. It's much more fluid. We have access to our multidimensional senses, our clair senses. We can potentially speak telepathically. So many cool things. And we'll get to know ourselves on such a deeper level, which is really exciting. And I've gotten a taste of this over the last week. And I'm really excited to share with you what I've learned about the process of moving through the transition. The metaphor that I was given around transition is actually related to childbirth or rebirth. So as you're about to birth a baby, you have contractions, they're squeezing out the density. And now the density is really important. The density is all of the programming and the distortions and the polarity that we have picked up in third density. This causes a lot of suffering for us. In order to move through the birth canal, to be reborn in fourth density, we have to clear and shed and dissipate that density. And that's what I'm going to share today, is a framework that I have been given, that I have been honing for myself. I've been working with my clients, and I feel like what I've landed on is something that's critical to help people through this transition. So I'm excited to share it. So as the contractions squeeze out the density so we can move through the birth canal, just before a baby is born or just before we are reborn, go through a period called transition. Now, when I experienced transition during childbirth, when I was giving birth to my daughter, it was the most ecstatic experience I had had in this lifetime. It was a spiritual experience, and that's what this can be like for us as well. And what I'm noticing is that there are quite a few common detours that I see on the path. And so what I wanted to do is share an expansion of the Sirian Formula, which I shared in the last video. So this is something I learned through the mystery school, the School of the 9 Serpents, which was taught by Lisa Royal Holt as she channeled Sasha and Hamon, a Pleiadian and Assyrian guide that she works with, that she channels. And so just as a quick recap, this formula is basically how we are releasing the density, is my interpretation. So it starts off with the reality of third density is extreme polarity. So this polarity is the way that humans have been programmed to categorize things as black or white, right or wrong, yes or no, the duality, the separation. It's like the extreme ends of the poles. And what I'll share with you is the process that I've been working through for myself that really solidified this for me. And it comes from the masculine and feminine polarity. Now, if you're in the spiritual world at all, you hear so much about masculine and feminine. And for me personally, a lot of what I had heard and learned resonated on some level, but I didn't feel like I fully understood it for myself. And the process that I've been guided on over the last month has really dropped it in for me. So just to recap though, so I'll walk you through some examples and some stories of how that's happened for me in multiple facets of my life, and then how I'm seeing it play out for my clients and my friends as well. So just to recap the Sirian formula. So we start with extreme polarity, and polarity is dense. It is so dense, it's heavy, it keeps us really locked in this reality. There's a lot of fear, there's a lot of judgment of self and others that comes from polarity. You know, you can see it in obviously the political system. It's pitting people against each other, it's othering. It's really forgetting that we are all one and we all are made of the same things. We all carry the totality within us. So it's really actually an illusion, but it has gotten embedded in our bodies and our nervous systems. And this happens through trapped emotion. And the way to clear this density is through paradox. So if we are able to hold, and at first I was seeing it as the two ends of the poles, so masculine and feminine, and then seeing how we hold both of those within us. I actually see it's being able to see the totality is helpful, see the whole spectrum, not just the two ends, but sometimes if you're very identified with one end of a polarity, sometimes being able to see the other is quite helpful in bringing you to paradox, where you can see that these two things are equal, they're equally true, they're equally untrue. So as we're able to move out of the very rigid black and white thinking of polarity and come into paradox, think of it as being able to see the full spectrum of the rainbow. It loosens the grip of that density on us, and we're able to start imagining possibility that we couldn't see before. And then through that process, we tend to have an experience that allows us to alchemize that polarity. And so this framework, I will talk about it on kind of a micro level in terms of, let's say, one aspect or one facet, one part of yourself that you recognize carries density. So that happens on the kind of the micro. And then there's a macro as we're thinking about the whole being moving through transition. And I'll explain what I mean by this, because what I found is I think there's actually a foundational polarity. And spoiler, it's around the masculine and feminine. My sense and what I'm seeing is that this polarity is one of, if not the most extreme distortions here on Earth at this time. It's embedded in the very fabric of our reality. And it's so unseen in a lot of ways because it's just the water that we've been swimming in. It's been like this for millennia. And so we don't even notice how extreme the polarity is. So when I learned the Sirian formula, it really resonated with me. And I've had this experience of paradox really unlocking an expansion of consciousness. So if you've ever had that experience where you are so identified with a belief about yourself, about the world, and then you have some experience that shows you how that's not even true, or how what you considered to be the opposite is just as true as what you believed. And it kind of breaks your mind open, and you go, oh, maybe there's much more to this than I even imagined. And it like dissipates the charge of that thing within you. So I'll just start to share a bit of what's been happening for me that unveiled this next layer of the framework for me. So I started my business, Earth Sky Activation, earlier this year. It had been something that had been incubating within me for a while. I had a long career in corporate. I was living in what I understood to be the masculine energy for a long time. So it was all about hustle and achievement and structure. Yeah, corporate. And when I left that job, I was determined not to work that way ever again. And I was also really burnt out. So the pendulum, and this often happens with polarity, right? For me, the pendulum swung really far in the other direction. So I gave myself a year off after I was made redundant to just rest and recharge. And I was living the exact opposite way. I didn't want any schedules, structures, commitments, beyond taking care of my kids and the things that you have to do. I really was resistant to any kind of what I now know is like the distorted masculine rigidity. And I really wanted to flow, and I wanted to, be able to go to the beach when I wanted to, and just really follow my moods and my energy. And that was a really important reclamation for me, because I had lived my entire life in my masculine energy, in a distorted masculine energy. Let me just be clear about that, because what I'm seeing now is that the polarity is a distortion of the masculine and feminine duality, right? So I'm going to use those words as a distinction. When I say polarity, I'm meaning some type of distortion, some type of density. So I had been living in a distorted masculine way for most of my life, very achievement oriented, ticking things off the list. It was quite harsh, to be honest. It doesn't value emotions, it just values doing. So when the pendulum swung the other way, I was like, I don't ever want to go back there. But if I'm honest with myself, I was operating from a distorted feminine way as well, which completely rejected the masculine way. So you can see how these are two ends of the extreme, right? And then even when I started my business, I was only wanting to do it in the feminine way, only posting when I had the energy and the inspiration. For me, a lot of this is around like creativity and inspiration and expression and flow, and just really listening to my inner knowing about things, which is beautiful. It's a beautiful part about being a woman, and something I was really reclaiming because I hadn't had the opportunity to explore that part of myself until then. So I'm grateful for that time. But there came a point a few months ago where I was getting the really strong guidance from my guides and my knowing that I was meant to click this mission into high gear. I have a mission to be of service to the expansion of consciousness, to the great transition. I know that I'm here to activate a remembrance within people of their missions related to this. And so it's important that I'm able to reach more people. It's important that I'm able to work with more people, that my message is getting out to more people. And I couldn't do that in the way that I was working before. And I was so terrified of burnout because all I'd ever experienced was the distorted masculine way of working. And so I got guidance to hire a business coach, to get some support from a virtual assistant even. And this felt like overkill, to be honest, based on where my business was at the time. But they were saying, no, build for where you're going for the future, not based on where you are now. So I said, okay, I followed the guidance. What I didn't realize was I was signing myself up to be a manager again. And this was something in my corporate life that really stretched me beyond my capacity, because I also had 2 young kids, and it really forces you to be much more structured, right? Like if I'm going to be delegating tasks to someone, I have to have a plan. I can't just flow completely in my feminine flow. So it's funny, I noticed that this is the way my guidance kind of guides me on the scavenger hunt is like, they don't tell me the whole reason why I'm getting the guidance. So it was just like, do this thing, bring in support. And I was like, oh yeah, support sounds great. I didn't realize, oh, okay, no, this is actually a bit of a Trojan horse for bringing in more structure and really facing the distortion around work within me, distorted masculine and feminine. So over the last month, I started to feel myself like my feminine flow and the creativity and inspiration, the tap felt like it was turned off. My energy was really low. I know that part of it was that I was needing to rest after a really intense month of channeling and inspiration and receiving and lots of action. But I was starting to panic that something was wrong, and I'd also hired in the support. And then I was like, I don't even have the energy to guide her. So I was having a bit of a panic and I was feeling like something's wrong. And I think I even posted about it. It was like, part of me knew this is the contraction before the expansion. And so that's what the contractions are doing, right? Because once we go through the transition and we're rebirthed, we are expanded. We're an expanded version of ourselves. So I knew on one level that was what was happening, but my human mind was panicking. And what I noticed was there was this part of me that is a really harsh inner critic. And now I'm calling it the taskmaster. It was like, you're not doing enough. You should be doing more. If you don't action this right now, the idea is going to go away. Like you're a failure. Like it's really, really harsh. But I was identified with it and I was starting to feel quite bad about myself. And then something made me go, something's not right here. What has happened? And I realized that it was all this self-imposed shoulds of what I should be doing, what I should do before the end of the year, what I needed to do. It wasn't coming from anywhere except from inside me. And I followed the thread and I realized, oh my gosh, that is a voice that I created when I was younger to motivate me. Because I didn't have parental guidance. What I did have was a very harsh mother. So I internalized a version of her voice, but that became my whipping like taskmaster. And I also see how my maternal line actually, a lot of the women in my maternal line have been living in their distorted masculine energy as well, taking on responsibility of both mother and father. My maternal line is very focused on intellectual and achievement to some extent, probably not as attuned emotionally. So it was this like distorted masculine energy. So I started just like following this thread. And to be honest, I used ChatGPT to help me with it because I was like, there's something here. You know, when you can start to feel it. So let me take a step back for a second. Let's go back to the Sirian formula so I can explain what's happening here. The most extreme polarity is when you're completely unconscious of it, right? So we start off completely unconscious. It's just running in the background. We're stuck in a loop of that we don't even realize we are. We often feel like the victim in this if bad things are happening to us. And then, we have a spiritual awakening. We have some level of consciousness. And these things come into our conscious awareness. So I definitely had some awareness of the fact that the way that I used to work was distorted. Like it wasn't working. And even as I left my corporate career, I really shifted the way that I was working and found much more balance. And then I had some awareness that the pendulum had swung. And then also at the same time, what I notice happens is, so it comes into your awareness, but you're still looping on the same program because you haven't yet alchemized it, right? But what tends to happen is, if you're awake or conscious or in spiritual spaces, you're seeking knowledge, you'll have teachers that come in and tell you, this is what we're seeking is healthy masculine and feminine, or balancing of, the sacred masculine and feminine, or, you see posts on Instagram about it, or you'll have synchronicities. And there are things where it's like, okay, yeah, now I have a known sense of what it should be, but I'm still here. Like, I'm not quite yet there where I should be. So this little whirlpool that people get stuck in, I think is actually one of the most dangerous parts of the spiritual space, because people mistake knowledge for actual embodied, integrated wisdom knowing change. So what ends up happening is, you get this information and you go, yep, I know it now. Yeah, I could have told you, I probably could have rattled off a lot of the, healthy feminine and healthy masculine traits and characteristics. But for me, the way that it always feels is like, oh, it hasn't quite stuck yet. I don't know, like, I haven't yet experienced that. And what I notice is when there's that gap, so now you have awareness, but you're not yet there can be a lot of shame there, or the ego comes in and goes, yep, I know it. I'm good. Nothing to see here. But you're still looping on the same behaviors. Or there's a fear of what it's going to take to actually change this behavior. So we can spend years stuck there, right? Like, to me, this is spiritual bypass. We can also spend years like just peeling back the layers. But what I've found is there's usually something that kind of pushes you out of that whirlpool. And often it can be quite like an intense experience, or you just choose. You're like, I'm sick of my own bullshit. I'm getting out of here. Like, yeah, I know all the things. I've read the books. I've done the courses. I've worked with the mentors, but nothing's changing. Well, it's because we're lying to ourselves about whether we've actually embodied the knowledge that we have. So for me, what happened was I was feeling desperate. I was like, I felt myself sliding down this ramp back to the distorted masculine in my soul-led business that I'd created that was never meant to feel like that. And it felt like, oh my gosh, it's happening again, and I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get out of this, and I can't actually imagine finding a different way of being productive and actually like getting my vision out into the world that doesn't feel like the way that I used to work. And this is a really critical clue. Usually what will happen is we know how it should be. I know it should be different than this. I see all kinds of business coaches telling me that balance the masculine and the feminine and da 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 da, and it'll be brilliant. And I'm like, yeah, but I haven't actually seen that for myself. So I don't really fully believe, and I've never experienced it. So I don't really fully believe that it's possible. Now, some part of me, my higher self, knows it's possible, right? Because that's part of where we get the knowledge as well. It's like, darling, there's a different way. So I was getting to this point of desperation. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm about to embark on like some big projects, and I don't want to do it the old way. And so I started following the thread. I was pulling the thread. Think about like a sweater unraveling. What's been happening? I've been feeling really low energy, and there's been this really harsh inner critic that's come in. And it dawned on me, and this is it, when you start to go into this inquiry and you really just get sick of the loop, you'll get a drop in sometimes. So what happened was, it went, that thing is not you. That taskmaster voice is how you internalized productivity, how you learned to be productive when you were a kid, when I was like 11, maybe even earlier. It's what, like school teaches you. It's this very rigid way. And I started to go, oh, well, maybe that's not even me. So, disidentifying with this thing that has always been with us is a really important step. So, what this did was it took me on this exploration. And I was like, oh, that's part of the distorted masculine for me. And then I could see the other side of the polarity, the distorted feminine. Oh, this like being allergic to any structure is also not helping me. And I would notice that I would have like these big peaks and valleys and this big ebb and flow, and I would have big bursts of inspiration, and then I would crash. And that was the only way I had ever experienced life. And I was like, I don't think it's meant to be like this. Maybe there's a different way. And when you have that spark of like, maybe there's actually a different way, and I've heard that, but there was some element of shame to it that I hadn't yet figured out how to do that. We can go into like, there's actually just something wrong with me that I can't do that. Maybe that's fine for everyone. Maybe it's because I had so much trauma as a child, whatever, we go into like, yeah, maybe that can be true for you, but I've never seen that. So maybe I'm just going to be like this forever. And, part of this can have to do with our brain styles. If you have any kind of neurodivergence or, there's different reasons why we might experience things differently. But there was something that came in and said, it doesn't have to be this hard. I was like, thank you. What it then did, this was wild. It led me down this path of exploring the masculine and feminine at a deeper layer and really understanding how, because of my childhood and my relationship with my parents, the only examples of masculine and feminine that I had ever seen were distorted. On the masculine side, what I now understand is, healthy masculine is masculine that stays. It's got structure and support, presence. I've never experienced that. And for so long, I was probably really ashamed to admit that. With my father, with romantic partners, because I was in my distorted masculine, I was actually attracting and creating dynamics that were not in balance, right? So my father was in and out of my life when I was a child, so that stability and staying wasn't there. What my inner child actually needed from the masculine was to know that she matters. And then I was able to go through this process that called in that healthy masculine energy from my higher self, which was so cool because it felt like pure me, pure, unconditional, loving me that I was channeling to soothe and give my inner child what she needed. I also did a process on the feminine side and realized that what I had missed out on that side was nurturing and the safe space to really express myself and explore creative expression. There was quite a bit of enmeshment with my own mother. I didn't get to explore my sense of self at the developmental stage when I should have. So I kind of took on some version of like her wounding and then a program of what a woman should be. But again, it was distorted through the lens of the patriarchal world of what a woman should be. So again, it was just all distortions. But I didn't know that because when it's the only thing you've ever experienced, it's just the water that you swim in. And so, of course, I've unpacked layers of this and the knowing of it over the years, but something landed at such a deeper level. And I was able to see that my experiences of the masculine and the feminine were pretty much all distorted. And that was the reason why it was hard for me to believe that there was a different way because I'd never actually seen the healthy version. And so in that realization, I was like, oh, maybe there is something out there that I haven't experienced, but it's still possible. How cool is that? And so I came out of shame, or maybe there was like previously there probably would have been ego. It would have been like, I've got it all figured out. Yep, I'm totally healed. That part of you that wants to believe that you are where you'd like to be, or, fear of putting myself out there. Because what was interesting is even though this exploration started off on the work front, it led me to what I've been grappling with in terms of my desire to open myself up again to love, but so much fear because of the patterns that I've looped on in my past, codependent patterns, trying to rescue, fix, and save partners, and fearing that if I venture back into that space again, that I was just going to fall back into those patterns. And so I had committed to giving myself, now it's been a year and a half single, contentedly single, not looking for anything. And I'm so grateful I did that because it gave me space to really see the polarity and the distortion within romantic relationships. I also saw it within friendships. So the distortion around sisterhood wounding, there's so much that came through over the last year and a half around this. And it's really crystallized in the last week, to be honest. And so as I followed this path, so again, we're moving from polarity to paradox by kind of unpicking it and seeing all the different layers and the distortion. And I was able even to see like how much internalized misogyny I had, how much there was still some part of me that on some level believed that men were better than women. I mean, like, I would not have wanted to admit that to myself. So this is the type of thing where you have to be so brutally honest with yourself and see like, okay, where does this live within me still? So as we can start to hold the paradox, and again, it's not just that the extreme ends. It's like the whole spectrum of possibility and what it would feel like to have the healthy, divine, masculine and feminine both live within me. And I've unknowingly, this is kind of what I've been doing for myself through my healing journey. I really learned to nurture my inner child, and I learned to become the structure and the stability for myself. There was a point a few months ago where I was sitting my favorite bushwalk and talking to my guides and feeling like I noticed that I was still waiting for someone to come rescue me. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. What if I wasn't doing that anymore? What if I just became the stability that I really need? And it really changed everything for me. And so in a way, I became that healthy, balanced masculine and feminine. And I even had a client when I was sharing some of this, my observations around this masculine and feminine polarity, say to me, oh, that's interesting, Maureen, because that's what I feel like you do for me in these sessions. And then I thought about it, I was like, oh, that's totally true. Like that's how I show up for my clients and for my children and for my inner child. So in a way, not having had that experience in my own childhood is part of my karma to dharma path. The wounded healer, it's the hero's journey, because I do believe that we choose the family that we're born into. We have these soul contracts that we sign up with other beings to learn what we need to learn. How this has all come together is that I experienced extreme polarity of the masculine and feminine, which mirrors the extreme polarity within humanity. And I believe that this is actually one of the most critical keys to unlock the releasing of density to make the transition of consciousness. And it's so interesting because right now, 3i Atlas is moving past Mars, the masculine, and then Venus, the feminine, as a way to help rebalance this polarity for Earth. Now, that's a very oversimplified version. I might link to a few videos that talk about this in a lot more detail, but it makes complete sense to me because as I've been connecting with 3i Atlas, I feel this like calm, unconditional love that I had never experienced in this human lifetime before. I also feel this when I channel Ra. So actually channeling Ra over the last few months has been the first time I felt what now I recognize is the healthy masculine. And just the amount of calm that runs through my body because of that is amazing. So, so just coming back to the framework, the human condition is that we are all programmed with so much polarity, which is density. This density actually lives within our body. So that's really important to know as well. Because as I was tracing all of this, I was able to see where each distortion lived in my body. And usually it's around one of the chakras. A lot of this around the masculine and feminine was around my heart and my throat, which makes sense, right? Like there's been such a suppression of the feminine voice, the feminine expression, and then a longing for unconditional love, but having only experienced distorted versions of that. So the heart space. And there was also this knowing that what was possible and who I actually am is so much more than these experiences that I've had. But there was some fear. There was some fear still holding on. And that was actually part of what led me down this path as well. So again, we start with the polarity. We can get stuck in the loop of knowing the things, but not actually yet embodying them. So that's what kind of kicks us out of this. So something activates the realization that you're stuck in the loop. We don't always get stuck in the loop. We can go from like being unaware of something to it coming into awareness and then like consciously working through the process to paradox and then embodying it, which then alchemizes it. So this is the process that we're going through. We can do that all at once. And that's what I'm actually wanting to teach people to do now, so that you don't have to take this detour into this death loop, because it ends up frustrating so many people. I think people get frustrated with the spiritual journey because of this. I think people also get frustrated with teachers who are teaching from that space, because if teachers haven't or guides haven't embodied the learning themselves, then they're teaching just from a knowing, and you can feel it. There's something missing in the frequency. It doesn't feel like whole truth. Like there's some aspect of truth to it, but if they haven't embodied it themselves, then it just doesn't hit right. And this is what I realized for myself as I have been embarking on this journey of, launching this business this year. Every time I would venture into an area where I hadn't completed this process, I would call in the experiences that would give me that embodied experience. So that's what I call the medicine, right? So the medicine is you've completed this whole process. And so this is what I'm wanting to teach people to do for themselves. It's not always easy to see all the pieces for yourself. So sometimes you do need that reflection. But in an ideal world, like I believe we all have the ability to do this, and we have like our own guidance that can guide us through this. So I'm hoping that the framework is actually a really good starting point. If you feel like you're stuck in some like confusing loop, or you feel like you've done the work but nothing's changing, this might be why. So once we've kind of hit the escape hatch from the death loop and we've started to really inquire and call in the experiences to help us really believe that something else is possible besides this very rigid polarity that we've believed or that we've experienced. So it starts to loosen things, and it also kind of feels like you're coming out of a trance. That's a really important part where it's like, what? Oh my gosh, I believed that for my whole life. Like, how is that even possible? And usually within this process, so, it's not all completely linear. I'm just trying to lay it out in a linear way so that it makes sense. Then there's a point when it actually becomes embodied. And how I experience this is now, if I identify a polarity, a density. So for instance, in this masculine feminine experience, if I am still in the polarity, and this is something I actually did, and I think to myself about the thing that I know is possible but I haven't yet experienced. So let's say a really secure masculine presence who stays. So right now I'm just feeling into where I feel that in my body. It was in my heart space. Now I noticed that the sensations have changed because it was a clenching feeling before, which is my body compass saying, nope, that doesn't feel true to me, because I didn't yet believe it was possible. And so it's a really good clue. So I'm actually just in the process of putting together a free offering around the Clarity Compass, or the body compass tool that I teach my clients to tune into these sensations, because it's really important. This is like the best navigation tool we have. So when it's ready, I'll link it below. And so, yeah, tuning into that sensation, I feel it in the heart space. Before it was a clenching. That's information. So that's telling me, okay, I've been told this is possible. Some part of me knows it is, but my body doesn't believe it's true. So there's some work to be done there. And so not until now, so this time when I did it, where I've gotten to now is I feel hopeful. I know it's possible. I've seen it. I've actually seen it. What this process led me to was actually experiencing that transition of what it feels like to go to fourth density. And I got to spend a whole evening there. And I saw all of the possibility. And then I came back because I'm here on a mission. I needed to receive that information to really embody the knowing that this is possible. And it was on so many different facets. But this masculine feminine piece is so critical. And what they showed me, what I was shown in fourth density, was that this distortion is the thing keeping humanity locked in the third density. Isn't that fascinating? And especially because, you know, we're in the age of Aquarius now, and the age of the feminine reawakening. I think it's a reclamation of the feminine. This is not the feminine at the expense of the masculine, because that would just be another polarity. We need the balance of the two. We need the balance within ourselves. So it's not just about men being in the healthy masculine and women being in the healthy feminine. This is about all of us have all of this inside of us, and going through that, the Sirian process, or, you know, now I'm calling this like the transition process, what I've overlaid on top of it. So once we embody that, that's when we have the ability to move more fluidly through consciousness into the fourth density. That is where all possibility exists. Another really important piece of the alchemy process is when we've experienced this embodiment, sharing is really important. So this is important, you know, after any kind of like medicine or shamanic journey or some big experience, big initiation. Sharing our experience with someone safe helps us really, really integrate that experience. So I had a pretty big transition experience on Friday night, and I've now shared it with a few trusted people to help me process and integrate and get feedback from them about their experience. And that's where I've really validated this feminine masculine distortion as being so critical to the process. So it's really important that we have community to be able to share our experiences with, and we learn so much from each other by sharing. That's the reason why I'm sharing more, and I'm actually sharing as vulnerably as I can about my own experience, not because yours will be exactly the same, but within that is encoded a path forward and perhaps a way to loosen the hold of shame or ego or fear that keeps us stuck in the loop. So I really encourage you to find your people. And if you feel like you don't have anyone that you can talk to about this stuff, I'm here for that. I'm actually in the process, in addition to these YouTube video podcasts, which I intend to continue and are intended to reach as many people as this resonates with, If this is something that really resonates with you, I'm in the process of putting together a private group where we can go deeper into some of these concepts. And I'll be sharing more of the transmissions that have been coming through from Raw, frameworks that I've been downloading. The overlay framework that I've put on top of the Sirian framework is actually something that I received as a transmission last month. And it's been just kind of landing and integrating for me. And I needed to go through this process on the masculine and feminine myself to really feel like it had locked in. Because the last piece of this is after the alchemy, then you're in a position to teach or guide others about that specific aspect that you have now alchemized. And once you've moved through this whole process and you feel that click, click, click into place, the Sirian triangle turns upside down. It's like the Merkaba, and you can see it becomes like multi-dimensional. That's how we're expanding and getting out of the density. That's what the transition feels like. You get access to all these parts of yourself that you had a sense were there, but you hadn't yet experienced, you hadn't yet fully embodied and integrated. That's where the inspiration for the painting came from. It was a clue for myself. And when I was sharing this framework with my friend yesterday, I was trying to figure out, I was like, I know it has something to do with the Merkaba. And she was like, yeah, when it all clicks into place, the triangle gets inverted, which alchemizes the density, and it's the ascension vehicle. I don't like to use the word ascension because it feels hierarchical, like something's better than something else. I don't experience it that way. This just feels like a natural evolution of humanity. This is also happening for Gaia at the same time. So as we transition, Earth is also transitioning at the same time. What is happening with Three Eye Atlas is supporting all of this. What is happening astrologically is supporting all of this. So it just feels like all of the clues have been buried in plain sight. And I'm just trying to bring them together and synthesize them in a way that is easier to understand than some of like maybe the esoteric things that you've heard, to give you experiences of what it looks like. And so even the fact that I'm recording this video right now, I didn't script it, which is what I've felt like I needed to do before in my distorted masculine. I wasn't worried about it being perfect. My friend also reminded me you can just channel the whole thing, which is essentially what I've done. I had something sketched out, and that's all I did. So I know there's a different way to work now because it's like, oh, that takes so much pressure off of content creation. And I know that I can get more out there when things really land. So I'm thinking that I'll probably share more stories and maybe go into more depth in different areas of this in future videos. If you're interested, please leave comments. Let me know what's resonating. Let me know what you have questions about. If something is confusing to you, or if you have a different experience, or if you're like, yes, this masculine feminine thing is definitely something that's coming to my awareness or something I'm working through the density on, please let me know. So yeah, comment, like, share this video. I'd really appreciate it. I feel so lit up to be able to share this and to be able to serve in this way. It's like a dream come true. So interesting to see how all of my life experience has come together to bring this to humanity. And I am not the only one doing this. Like, there's so many people talking about these things right now. I think all of the voices matter. Each one has a unique resonance, a unique frequency that will resonate with different people. So if you feel like you have a role to play and maybe you're like, well, oh, I'm getting these messages too, please share it. The more people sharing this stuff, the better. So again, this process happens on the micro level. You know, it might be around a health journey, or it might be around motherhood, or it might be around starting a business. We each have our unique role to play in this, is what I want you to really believe and know, because each one of us will have walked this path for our own unique blueprint, and that will hold the keys that will unlock for someone else. So I'm not going to be able to guide people through every single aspect of what they've experienced from my own personal experience. There's certain areas that I'm still needing to embody. And so if a client was really wanting to explore that area, I can walk them through the process, but I might send them to someone who has embodied that specific area to get that code, that frequency. So I think where I come in is I have embodied the frequency of the process and lots of different facets that I've walked through the process on. It's about walking people through a process of how to move through the transition. And because I experienced it myself, I now feel really confident to guide people through it. And the interesting thing was, once you move through the transition, it's not like you poof, disappear, and you're not in the 3D world anymore. You just have more fluidity between the two, and you have a much greater sense of who you are, the truth of who you are, of your I am, what you're here to do. And so part of my role is to activate that remembrance for people so they can have that experience and they can really lock into their unique piece, their unique key to unlocking this for the collective. Let me just feel into whether there's anything else that wants to be shared right now. So just to walk through how this transition process layers on top of the Sirian formula from the big picture. So we start off with polarity, the most distortion, the most density. We're unconscious to it. It's just running in the background. Then we have some awareness, but we're still looping on that unconscious pattern. We might think that we have the knowledge and that we've got it and we're done with that piece, but if we haven't yet embodied it, it's still running the show. And this is the reason why you can do all the courses and read all the books and watch all the videos and listen to all the podcasts, but nothing is actually materially changing in your life. You keep repeating the same patterns. That's why, because you haven't yet walked through the process of really like admitting to yourself that there's a gap between what you know is possible and what you actually believe. So again, the shame, the ego, the fear steps in to stop you from admitting that to yourself. And then something will happen that will kind of force you out of that loop, and you'll have an experience or multiple experiences, clues on the scavenger hunt that will lead you to being able to hold paradox, and then it will allow you to embody it. So again, then we go through that somatic exercise where we feel into where that polarity, where that density lives within our body, and allow it to give us messages to understand what has not yet been released, dissipated. There's lots of different ways then to release that. Sometimes we have to have like the disconfirming experience. Sometimes, to be honest, this is what things like plant medicine and shamanic journeys and things like that are great for, because you get to have more of like a fourth density and higher experience of what's possible, experience something that you haven't yet experienced in this reality. But that doesn't always necessarily mean that you fully embodied it. And then often you have to kind of like jump off a cliff and do something that scares you to really experience the non-distorted, the non-polarized version. And then that process alchemizes it, and it's like this magical. I actually felt it yesterday when I was debriefing with a friend around this. As she was talking, I identified another little pocket of density, because even though I had the experience of going into fourth density, I've come back. I feel like that was just to actually show me what was possible and to connect me with my I am in a much more embodied way. But I came back and noticed, okay, there's still density, pockets of density living within me. And there was something that she said that kicked off this process in real time within a minute. And I felt it in my body. I felt into the density. And as I put my attention on it, it actually just evaporated. I felt it leave my body. That was the alchemy. So now that I have walked through this process many times and brought it into a framework for myself that I have experienced many, many, many times, I'm in a position to teach and guide others. And I was shown that really clearly, that this is so intrinsically linked to my mission, which makes complete sense, right? If it's all about sovereignty and liberating ourselves, this is the process that you can walk through to liberate yourself. Now, of course, I'm here to support you. If you need some guidance on any of these steps, please reach out for an alignment call if you'd like to work together. I've also got an in-person event here on the Central Coast, New South Wales, coming up on the 30th of November. And yeah, I'm really excited to share more. If this resonates with you, please like, subscribe, share it. It really would mean a lot to me, because it does feel like I've been given this information to help humanity. Sending you so much love. Until next time, happy transitioning.